All right, everyone. So we're going to be giving an NFL betting preview for this week, and I can't wait to get into this. So we're going to give you arguments for each side and talk about all these games, let you know what we're betting, and if there's a game that I'm staying away from, all of that. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the Vikings and the Steelers. So this is the 9:30 a.m. game. It's in Dublin, and when I look at this game, right, we'll give you both sides. So we'll start with the Vikings. Listen, this is the argument for the Vikings to cover. That defense is absolutely phenomenal, right? What Brian Flores is doing with that defense is fantastic. And it's kind of doubled up here with the quarterback that the Steelers have in Aaron Rodgers, right? I've been a big defender of Aaron Rodgers in terms of his play over the past few years because I just think, it's not really, he's not the biggest problem on the teams he's been on. But the one thing we do know is that Rodgers is just not the same guy when facing, the blitz. And so if the Vikings can get there and make life miserable for him, this is probably going to be a pretty ugly game, right? And that is kind of one of the paths. The second part of this is, JJ McCarthy's dealing with an injury, so Carson Wentz has stepped in. Long term, we'll see what JJ McCarthy can be at quarterback. In the short term, he just is simply not very good. And so I don't view that injury as one where it's like, you lost your starting QB and now you're just having to play without him. It's like, well, you lost your starting QB and you have someone in there that probably can give you better production, if not at least the same production you were getting from JJ McCarthy. Now let's flip over to the Steelers. Now, on the Steelers side, there's a few things here. Number one, what this Vikings team is, we are still not entirely sure yet. And what I mean by that is when you look at what the Vikings have done, their body of work, that defense has really been the main driver. But I haven't seen in any of these games necessarily that consistent offensive performance, right? I mean, you go back to that game against the Bengals. That game was all defense, right? The defense blew that thing wide open. And from there, you saw the success that they had. And the Bengals don't have a very good defense. So we don't know what this offense is going to look like. And because of that, if the Steelers defense can slow this offense down and make this a game, and the Steelers offense doesn't turn the ball over, you never know what happens. You never know what happens. And this is a Steelers team that has DK Metcalf. We'll see about how healthy Jalen Warren is. They're going to give it, they're going to give the Vikings one of their best challenges. Yeah, the Vikings, when we look at who they've played so far, and I'll pull it up here on my phone, when we look at who they've played so far and the type of games they've had, well, let's go down the list. They beat the Bears week one in a game, right? In a game that they were down for the vast majority of, right? And it was really a collapse by the Bears that they were able to get a win. Against the Falcons, they lose 22-6, only able to put up 6 points on a Falcons team that we just saw get destroyed by the Panthers. And then last week, 48-10, with that, defense of the Vikings doing most of the scoring. So I just think that the Steelers, if that defense plays well and the offense just doesn't make those key mistakes that the Bengals made, they're going to be in this game. So where are we betting? Who am I betting on? Well, might shock you here. I'm actually betting on the Steelers. And the reason for that is because I do not have as much faith in this Vikings team as a lot of people do. I had faith in them last week. I do think Carson Wentz is going to be a better quarterback as of right now, right, than JJ McCarthy would be in this spot. But I think this is a team where you're going to see some really high highs when that defense is really rolling and some low lows when that defense isn't just playing the way they were playing against the Bengals. And I trust a lot more in this Steelers team to keep it close and end up winning on a game-winning field goal. And another thing I don't think is being talked about much is that, and if you watch our news channel, our sports news channel, you would have heard this throughout the season, is I was saying I think the Vikings made a huge mistake because Rodgers wanted to go to the Vikings by not having him as their quarterback. I think he would have been the perfect veteran presence for them on the offensive end paired with this great defense. And I think they're going to really regret that in this game because I think the Steelers are going to just be consistently moving the ball. Doesn't mean they're going to score a ton of points, but they're going to score enough. And I don't think the Vikings offense is going to be able to win. All right, next game, the Chargers and the Giants. So once again, this is going to be a very, very interesting game in my opinion. On the Chargers end of this, well, we just saw, the Giants and their performance against the Chiefs. And what the Giants have done all year is kind of fight, hang around, and just not be able on the offensive end to put up the points. And then these teams pull away late, right? So the Cowboys game, that was back and forth and it was a ton of yards. But against the Commanders, this Giants defense kept that thing close until late because they were able to pull away. So when we're talking about this 6 point spread, same with the Chiefs, right? They pulled away late. So when we're talking about this 6 point spread, it's doable, right? And we've seen the Giants play good, tough games and yet not cover a spread of six. And the Chargers, it's their time now to prove how real they are. For in the past, the Chargers have been that team in the offseason. Everybody's saying, yep, this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year. They have all this talent. They have all this talent. And we just haven't seen it yet. And even this year, I understand that they're 3-0, right? But I still have a little bit more that I would like to see, right? If we go down the games that the Chargers have played, big win against the Broncos, 23-20. Very easily could have lost that thing, and it was an ugly game. Look, that was a division game. Don't have a problem with it, but the point is, it wasn't some dominating performance. Against the Raiders, first half, they were dominating. They won 20-9, but everybody kind of agrees how the Raiders have been performing as of late. This is a team that not many people are too hyped on, and I just didn't see it in the second half, right? It was almost like they were allowing them to hang around with only 3 points scored in the second half. And when we look at the Chiefs game, that's a huge win. There's no question about it. But we don't know what the Chiefs are, right? And so I'm not taking any of those wins away from them. I'm just saying this is a game where if they can get to 4-0, then we could say, you know what? Even if we don't know exactly, because the Giants aren't this great team, right? Exactly how they're going to fend off, all these playoff teams, at least we know that they're taking care of the teams that in past years they would have found a way to lose to. So that's what's at stake here, right? Herbert and company, they're going to have to put out a performance, and I would like to see them cover the spread. If they win this game by 2 or 3, fine. But I think if they put out a dominating performance, that would be huge for them. All right, on the Giants end, this is one of those games you're at home, they have nothing to lose, and the problem for the Chargers is going to be this Giants defense has played pretty well in 2 of the 3 games, and even in the game they didn't play well. That just felt like one of those games where it doesn't matter how good the defense plays, right? Both teams are just playing perfect offense and scoring. That's how it felt against the Cowboys. But 2 of the 3 games we've seen, that defense has been very, very good and kept this team alive. And so when we're talking about a 6 point spread and you add in now Jackson Dart, I know he's a rookie, I know he's young, and I know it's going to be his first real start in the NFL, but we've seen the Giants offense. The Giants offense really can't be too much worse than it's been. You can have turnovers, don't get me wrong, Russ, he threw all the turnovers Russ has had have been turnovers that, sure they're bad, but they're not like, okay, he turns it over on his own 20 and it leads to a pick six, right? They've been different types of turnovers. And that's the only way that this offense could look worse is if they were actually giving the ball up to the defenders and, they were running in a pick six or a strip sack or something like that. That's the only way this offense could get worse. So I think they have a shot here. And for my pick, I'm going to be rolling with the Giants +6. And I wouldn't even tell you not to lay a little bit on the money line. And the reason for that is it just feels like such a trap spot for the Chargers. The Chargers have played phenomenally in terms of what they needed to do coming in. If you told them they would be 3-0 heading into a game against the New York Giants, they wouldn't care if they won every game by 1 point. They would take it. And I think what they're doing is they're probably starting to feel themselves a little bit. They also have a little bit of injuries, and this is one of those spots where the Giants can just creep up on you. I don't know if they're going to win. I will be betting the spread. Maybe I'll be betting the money line, but I'm definitely betting the spread. And I think you really can't go wrong with the Giants in this one. If Jackson Dart gives them a little bit of a boost, they're going to be in this game. That's all I can tell you. Is if he gives a little bit of a boost to this offense, they will be in the game. The question is, can they close the deal? If they're in the game, +6 is going to be a pretty good bet in this case. Okay, next game, Browns and Lions. Now, this is one of those games, right? We just saw the Cleveland Browns beat the Packers, right? And when we talked about the Giants' elite defense, the Browns are almost on another level from that. I think the Giants have a good defense, but this Browns team finds a way to win games with their defense, not just keep their team in the game. They found a way to win a game based off that defense, and they did a phenomenal job. And they're playing a Lions team that's coming off this major win against the Ravens. And so the truth is, if you're thinking about betting the Browns, the reasoning is pretty simple. You're getting 10 points. That is so many points. The Lions are coming off the highest of highs, right? Do they view this as kind of a letdown spot? There's potential for that. And the question is, right, this Lions defense, they looked pretty good against Lamar. They got him wrapped up. But we've seen in the past, the Lions defense is gettable, right? And so all the Browns have to do to cover this spread is to score a few points and let their defense cover the rest, right? You can figure if the Browns could get to 14 points, right, that would mean the Lions would have to put up over 24. You can trust that defense maybe not to give up 25, 26, 27 points, right? I know the Lions have a great offense, but this is one of the best defenses in the league, right? This is a defense that we just saw winning them a game, right? They won them a game outright. It wasn't one of those things where the defense, came in and just said, look, we're going to keep it close and the offense delivered. This was a game where the Browns defense just won. On the flip side of this, the Lions, okay. On one hand, I was super impressed with their defense against the Ravens. If that defense performance carries over into this game, the Browns are going to be in a world of hurt because if they're getting sacks, if they're able to stop the Browns offense completely, and it's only a 10-point spread, the Lions are going to score more than 10 points. They just are, right? You're not going to be able to do to the Lions what you were able to do to the Packers. And it's just not going to happen. The Lions are a much better offense. And it's not even that I'm saying that the Lions are better than the Packers, right? We saw the Packers beat the Lions. I'm just talking about the offensive firepower. When the Lions are on, you're not going to be able to stop them. I don't think the Packers have that kind of offensive ability where when they're on, you can't stop them. So that's the first thing here. And the second thing is, the Browns, it feels like this is one of the reasons, right? It's so important to have an offense that is pretty good. And it's so hard to win when you only have that defense because at some point you just get beat up, you get run down. And I think the Lions, they might be walking into a spot where the Browns gave it everything they had last week, got a massive win. You're not going to be able to pull that off 2 weeks in a row. So you're really, if you're betting on the Browns, you're going to be betting on their offense being a little bit better. So what am I betting in this? I'm going to be going with the Lions minus 10. They're at home. The Browns, they're coming off a win. I just think they're not going to be as quite as sharp. And if that Browns offense can't, like I said, the minimum amount of points I think this team is going to have to score is 14. And even 14 might not do it for you, right? I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that defense is going to look good. If you're scoring 7 points in this game, sorry, I think the Lions are going to get over 20 points. You're going to need 14. Now, could that 14 come from a pick six? Could it come from a strip sack? Sure, right? That is a potential. But I really, I just have to say, I was so impressed in the game against the Ravens because that just felt like such a game that the Lions lose, right? That just felt like the perfect Lions lose spot. We actually did bet on the Lions, but the reason I bet on them was because I was like, you know what? I'm thinking this might be a different team this year. But that felt like a spot in past years they would have really, laid an egg and they didn't. So I like the Lions minus 10 here. Saints and Bills. This is one of those games I am betting, and I'll just give my pick right away because we don't need to sit too long on this game. But I am going to be rolling with the Bills minus 15.5. I just want to preface that with I don't love this game at all. I look, the Bills, they very well could not cover this spread, right? This is a backdoor cover game, and this has the smell of that everywhere, right? Meaning, I mean, you saw what happened against the Dolphins when the Bills, you felt like they had momentum to cover that game in certain spots, and they just, what was it, a missed field goal, I think it was, that turned the whole tide. So when we're talking about a spread of 15.5 points, it's different than a spread of even 6 or a spread of 2.5, right? This is a real problem to cover because you could be up 21 points in this game and get backdoored by the Saints scoring late. Like that's a real concern. I am going with the Bills. I just can't bring myself to bet on the Saints on the road. But I would not say if you're someone who I'm like, you know what, I bet a few games, a weekend. This game would be nowhere near my betting board. Okay, Eagles and Bucs. So this one I really enjoy. This is going to be an awesome game, and it's going to tell us a lot about both teams. but we're going to start why the Eagles can cover. You know, I am, and you would know this if you watch our news channel. I am probably one of the biggest Eagles doubters out there, meaning I constantly am doubting this team. And this year, I've continued to doubt them. And look how they beat the Rams, but they just find a way to win, right? And so when I look at this game at -3.5, one thing I want to be clear about is the narrative surrounding Jalen Hurts, right, and this Eagles offense. I just don't think it's very well founded. We've seen Jalen Hurts be able to throw the football when he's had to. We've seen what AJ Brown can do when he needs to. And I just don't think this idea that they're, handing it off to Saquon so much, or they only can do it if Saquon. I just don't buy it. I really just don't. I think what they do is they prefer to win games that way because it's probably the most consistent, right? When you could just kind of get up and run out the clock, that's a good way to do it, and you're not taking risks. So, how can the Eagles win this? Well, the Bucs are all banged up, right? They have a ton of injuries, including to their quarterback. Their best receiver is injured. I know they have a rookie receiver that's killing it, and they might get Godwin back here, but still, they're dealing with injuries. Mayfield's dealing with an injury. Offensive line is a mess. And we're talking about a 3.5 point spread, as we saw last week when the Eagles were 3.5 point favorites. And I was on the Rams. They just killed us all, right, with that blocked field goal, running it all the way back. I think if they could get up in this game and they could hand the ball off to Saquon, make a few plays, 3.5 is not out of the question. This isn't a 6.5 or something like that. Like I would be more nervous if the Bucs were traveling to Philly and this thing was like a 6.5. I'd say, whoa, wait a minute. But I think they could easily cover the spread because we're looking at it from the standpoint of, all right, we know what this team could do, and all they have to do is get a lead, and they can hang on and find a way to win this game. Why can the Bucs cover? Well, simply put, Baker Mayfield is a gamer, and we've seen it time and time again. His ability, when you just don't think that he could do something, he goes ahead and he does it, and he just finds a way to make plays. And you're giving him more than a field goal at home. And so this is one of those things where the Bucs, they're 3-0 just like the Eagles, but the Bucs are coming in with a lot less fanfare and a lot less hype. And so all they have to do, right, is if you could just even get up in this game, if you could shut down what the Eagles want to do, similarly to what the Rams did in the first half, 3.5 points should cover, right? 3.5 points should cover. So if we continue to see that even with the injury concerns, the Bucs are able to play tough, you're getting points, right? And 3.5 is such a beautiful number. When I'm looking at 3.5, it's like I'm getting like in cartoons when you get the hearts in your eyes, right? That's such a wonderful, beautiful number. And I do think the Bucs kind of want to make a statement here. Like I said, I don't want to continue to be the Eagles doubter, but we haven't seen the Eagles put together that dominating performance. And I always tell people and remind people that that year when the Eagles were red hot and then they kind of fell off, was a year when they were winning these close games like this. So that's the only concern I have. My bet in this game, and I know Eagles fans are going to be pissed, but I'm going to be rolling with the Bucs plus 3.5 simply because of the number. I could very easily see the Eagles come in and win this game, but you're giving me 3.5 points. You're giving me that field goal. I'm going to ride with the Bucs here. I would not bet. This is not a spot I would bet the money line. I think this is going to be a tough game. This is going to be an ugly game. This is going to be two teams kind of battling it out, and you don't want to be sitting in a scenario, where the Eagles are trying to run out the clock to kick a field goal, and you decided to take the money line instead of 3.5. Right? That 3.5 gives you a lot of cushion, and I think in this game, which is going to be tight, most likely, it's worth it. All right, the Panthers and the Patriots. So the Panthers, after that big win, people are asking questions about them now. Is this a team that we should look out for? You can't overstate how big of a win that was. You're 1-2 after that win. You beat a team in your division, and now you're traveling to, the Patriots home. And look, I mean, the Patriots are a beatable team. I said after I forgot, was it the Cardinals game, that I thought what we've seen in prior years where Bryce Young kind of finds his rhythm, I thought he found it at the end of that Cardinals game, and it extended into that game against the Falcons, right? And so, bottom line is here, the Patriots. I know they're at home, you probably shouldn't be giving 5.5 points to anybody, right? That's just the bottom line of this whole thing. I don't think they should be giving 5.5 points to anybody. So the Panthers are certainly a spot here. If they play well, they could keep this within 5.5, right? If we see that team we saw against the Falcons, I'm not predicting they're going to beat the Patriots 30-0, but could they keep it within 5.5? Can they keep it close? I think yes. And we still are yet to see this Patriots team play a really clean game. And that killed them. I mean, they should have beat the Steelers, right? They just couldn't play a clean game. And that's going to be a problem. If you don't play a clean game, you're not covering a 5.5 point spread. So why can the Patriots cover? Well, simply put, we've only seen the Panthers have one good game. And I do think that what we've seen over the course of this year for the Patriots is that they are in the running to be one of those teams that has a terrible record at the end of the year, but that is much better than their record shows. And I think Mike Vrabel is getting this team to play good football. Like I said, I understand the turnovers and the mistakes, but he has a young QB, and this is not an offense that anybody expects to be, putting up 30 points a game. He's just getting his team there, but they fight and they play hard. And if this Panthers team looks like they have in the first, because remember, as good as that comeback was against the Cardinals, they were down big in that game. And if the Patriots play fundamentally sound football, if they can control the clock, run the ball, Drake May make some plays, they don't turn the ball over. I understand it's 5.5, but there's not a lot of trust here with the Panthers. So where am I betting? I'm going to be betting Patriots minus 5.5, and I hate it. It stinks. Every part of me was like, no, no, no. Just go ahead and bet the Panthers. Just go ahead and bet the Panthers. Just go ahead and bet the Panthers. I have to bet the Patriots. This just feels like one of those spots where Vegas is telling you, man, you bet the Panthers here, and then the Patriots come out and they just beat them 28-7 or something crazy, right? Because they just play a great game. I think the Patriots are due for that really good game. And, look, there might be a chance that when I'm doing this video again next week, that I'm telling you about the Panthers at 2-2 and they look like they're more for real. But sometimes when you're betting, everybody knows that you just get that gut feeling and you got to roll with it. All right, so the Commanders Falcons game is interesting. I just want to get this out first that I actually bet this before the Jaden Daniels injury announcement and the Terry McLaurin injury announcement. And so I actually have this at Falcons plus 1.5. I'm kind of giving away, I guess, what I'm betting, but I bet it a second time just because I am, doing this video and I don't want to give you guys a pick that I'm not actually betting. And so I'm betting, just going to get it out there, the minus 2.5. Okay. I am betting the minus 2.5, but I also have another bet that is plus, I think, 1.5 that was before the injury announcement. But let's go through again, just like I did with the other ones, give the arguments for both sides. For starters, on the Commanders, last week, this was one of the games that bit me, right? I had bet similar reason. I had bet the Raiders because I thought they were a good even with Jaden Daniels in. I think I had them at +6. I bet them at +6. And then when the Jaden Daniels injury announcement came in, I bet them live or not live like during the game. I bet them after the injury announcement at I think, oh, well, we just got, let's refresh this. Let's refresh this. Okay, sorry about that. I bet them again and I lost both because the Commanders proved me wrong. Um, Marcus Mariota came in and did what he had to do. They scored on a bunch of big plays, and the defense was able to hold enough. I know Gino had some moments, but they were able to hold enough. The problem here, and this is why I am betting the Falcons and doubling down on what cost me last week, is because the sometimes when you have an injury to a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, you could get one game. You could even get 2 games. So this would be that. But at some point, defenses just start recognizing. And we've seen in these games that the Falcons defense is the real deal. I get last week, but I don't think we could judge too much into last week. I just think that was one of those games, where the Falcons were just asleep at the wheel. But when we look back at that Vikings game and what they did, 22-6, right? They really they've done more to that Vikings team. That defense wasn't rolling because the offense wasn't playing lights out in that game either, right? They were giving the Vikings their chances. They still found a way to win the game. They played that Bucs team and they played them close, 23-20. And so I just think this is a spot where you're not playing this Raiders team where that defense isn't very good and they're just just so far this year, not that great of a team. The Falcons, I know what happened last week, but I think that defense is going to be good enough to make life miserable for Marcus Mariota in that offense. And then we're getting this at 2.5. That's a fine number. They're at home. They need this game, right? This is a must win for the Falcons, and I think they're going to take care of business and go ahead and do that. So our bet is going to be the Falcons minus 2.5. Titans Texans. I'm going to tell you this, okay? I actually can't remember if I placed this bet in my DraftKings yet. Maybe I have, but I'll just tell you, I'm probably staying far away from this game. If I was to bet, and I don't know if I did, I'll probably end up placing it at some point, but it would be on Texans -7. I think the Texans need this game, and the Titans are just really bad. But I don't know. Look, there's so many games in this card. If you're not someone that's betting every game, then like I said, I'm not even going to give kind of a breakdown because the only breakdown I need to give is the Texans need this game if they want to make the playoffs. If they find a way to lose, they're done. Right? That's it. They are done. It is a big number considering what this offense has looked like, but that's kind of why I'm like I'm going to just stay away from it because I could really see a lot of different things happening. All right, next one, the Colts and the Rams. So this, if you watch our news channel, I've been one of the biggest Daniel Jones defenders for about 2 years. And I think so far I've been proven right. But this game is going to be a little bit different. Um, they're 3-0, and I know you're going to see a change in the media's narrative. I am going to be betting the Rams plus 3.5 or -3.5. And that's because, look, this is a game where the Colts, they're traveling, they're on the road. The Rams are a good team. The Rams are coming off a devastating loss. The Rams need this game a lot more than the Colts. This is just a game where the Colts, they let one get away. And I don't love the 3.5, but I have a feeling this game is going to be, you know, 7, 14-point game. We need to hope the Rams are scoring some touchdowns because if this thing's hanging around 10, I'm going to be pulling my hair out, nervous that the Colts do go ahead and, backdoor cover this thing. I think the spread is just low enough at 3.5 that we could trust it. If it is able to get even lower, like to a -3, that would be cool. I think it's pretty simple. The Rams need this, and the Colts are due for a letdown spot, right? Nobody expects the Colts to go undefeated. The media might act like, oh, here's, Daniel Jones and company. They lost the big one, but this is just a game that you lose, right? You're 3-0. You find a way to lose this game, I think, and we just need it to be by more than 4. That's why I'm rolling with the Rams. But I wouldn't. I just want to say this before, so when I'm betting on them next week, potentially, if I end up betting on them, right, people aren't jumping off the Colts bandwagon. Everybody's going to if they lose this game. They shouldn't, right? Okay. Jags 49ers. So this one is interesting because I'm going to just give away the bet now. The 49ers, I'm betting the 49ers. I got it at -3 though. So this is a game I'm going to just let you know that my bet does not line up with the live odds you're seeing. I have it at -3. Is it a big deal? I actually think yes. I would still, if I was betting it now, I would still bet -3.5. But it is a big deal because the Niners are. This is the type of team the Niners are, right? Even the games they find a way to win, it is like a nightmare. Okay, it's a complete nightmare to watch, and it's ugly, right? It's kind of fun to watch if you don't have any stake in it. But if you're someone who is betting, I mean, let's go over the wins they've had. Seahawks 17-13, Saints 26-21, Cardinals 16-15, right? So they're just all ugly, close games. And the Jags are no different. The Jags can make a statement here. If they can go out and win, right, against a 49ers team that is now very injured with Bosa also out, it puts you in a good spot in that division. Very simply, puts you in a good spot. If they lose this game, because this is a winnable game for the Jags, but I'm rolling with the 49ers because I just think the Jags have shown us time and time and time again that once you start buying in, right, once you see them get that first win, they come back down to earth. And then you go, well, vintage Jags, right? So I'm going to be rolling with the Niners here, but I just want to make it clear I am not betting it at 3.5. The Ravens and the Chiefs. So this is a tough one. I think, I've been watching a lot of kind of sports talk, radio, and various other things. And, one of the interesting parts of the Ravens versus the Chiefs is that, the narrative maybe unfairly or fairly, is people clearly think that the Ravens are a better team than the Chiefs. And I know that frustrates some people because they're saying, look, they had the same record, right? It's like, why is there this frustration and more respect for the Ravens versus the Chiefs? And the reason I would give is because even in the losses we've seen from the Ravens, that offense just looks like it's dealing. And the defense is a big problem, but the offense looks like it's dealing. On the Chiefs side against the Eagles, there just feels like there is something going on with that team that I just don't know how they really fix it. The Mahomes Kelsey combination, it is in a bad way right now. It cost them, really, I would argue, you could make the argument that cost them 2 games. Right? They're 1-2, and I think that connection cost them 2 games. In the Chargers game, they had a potential touchdown, missed the throw to Kelsey. In the Eagles game, missed the throw to Kelsey in the red zone. It gets picked off. It was momentum changing. It was the reason, I mean, not the sole reason, but one of the reasons they lost. And so when I'm looking at this game, even though they're at home, I just don't know, what do I have to go off that I'm like, yeah, the Chiefs, if they just do this, they're going to be able to win. At least with the Ravens, I could look and say against the Bills, they had that thing won, turn the ball over, and then weren't able to finish the deal. Against the Lions, the Ravens, they were hanging around, right? They were hanging around. They were in some, there was kind of a momentum shift back and forth. It just came down to the inability of the Ravens to make plays. The problem is I don't know if the Chiefs have the ability to put as much pressure as those teams did on the Ravens, right? Because the Bills, they scored a shit ton of points. The Lions, they scored a shit ton of points. If the Chiefs are going to be looking on the offensive end like they have through the first 3 weeks, then what are we going to see from them? Right? If you can only, if the Chiefs offense can only be able to get 21 points, 24 points, I don't think the Ravens are going to be all that worried. When they get worried is when you lose a game to the Bills, giving up 40 points. When you lose a game to the Lions, giving up the amount of points they gave up in that. So I'm going to be rolling with the Ravens -2.5. Would I be stunned if the Chiefs come in here and, at home and win? No, but I just think the Ravens right now, to me, feel like the team I could trust more because that Kelsey Mahomes connection that has been so good for so long, it doesn't seem to be the same right now. Now, maybe that will be fixed, but it just does not seem to be the same. Okay, we're going to not do the Monday game, so we're going to do the Sunday and these two. The Bears and the Raiders. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm betting the Raiders -1.5, but this is complete, hold your nose and bet this game. The Raiders have looked terrible. Um, you know, the fact that in a game that they needed badly against the Commanders, like, look, the game against the Chargers, they look bad, fine, but to respond to that game, playing a team like the Commanders, who doesn't have their best player, doesn't have their quarterback who makes everything happen, to lose the way they did to that team completely changed my view of them. And so I'm betting them here against a Bears team that just decimated the Cowboys, but I'm doing it just because it's an ugly line. I think the Bears, if look, they win this game, they have completely turned the tide of this season. All of the ugliness at the beginning of the year now changes if you go ahead and win this one, right? The ugliness is gone. And so I guess I'm saying I'm betting the Raiders and making a case for the Bears. I just don't have a case for the Raiders besides this line is ugly. Just saying that, right? Um, and sometimes in the NFL, one of the things I like to see is you just have such week to week movement in the NFL is unlike anything in any other sport where, in baseball, you lose a game, people go, okay, one game, we'll play again the next day, right? And you go and do that. NBA, you lose a game, okay, game later. The NFL, you play one game a week, and if this was a stock price, it would be like penny stocks, right? Because things are going up and down and up and down and up and down. And I think that's the case here, where the Bears, they have seen this huge surge in goodwill after the win, right? And stock go way up. And the Raiders, deservedly so, after the last 2 games, have seen their stock go way down. They're at home. They need this game. I mean, the Bears honestly need this game too, but the Raiders, if they lose this, the Broncos, the Chiefs, the Chargers, right? You're basically, you have no shot of winning that division, in my opinion, and probably no shot at making the playoffs if you lose this one. If you win this one, you get one more chance, I would say, or you put yourself back in the conversation to make the playoffs. And then finally, the Cowboys and the Packers. So I'm going to be betting the Cowboys +7, right? And the reason I'm betting the Cowboys +7 is because there's so much hype right now behind the Packers, right? Even with their loss, people are like, the Cowboys defense is terrible. You go down the list, right, of all the problems with the Cowboys. No CeeDee Lamb. And it just reminds me of week one when there was no argument as to why I was betting the Cowboys week one. There was no argument for it, right? Because you just had this Eagles team that's coming off a championship, and you have a Dallas Cowboys team that just traded away their best defensive player. And everybody was kind of like, you know what? This is going to be Eagles route. Okay. The Eagles are going to route Cowboys, they're not going to even want to play, basically, right? That was kind of the narrative going into the game. And little did we know the Cowboys probably should have won, right? They gave that game everything they had. And so when I see this spread, I understand the arguments. Look, Micah Parsons, I didn't love what Jerry Jones, kind of adding fuel to the fire on this one. But I just think that the Packers still need to prove to me, especially on the offensive end, that they are consistently dominant. You know, people forget when we talk about the offense of like a team like the Chicago Bears, they have names that you look at the running game with Swift, Caleb Williams, we know all about him, right? And what he has been in college, right? In the big moments in the NFL, what he's been, right? In his best moments. DJ Moore as a receiver, Roma Dunze. The Packers, I feel like with their receiving core, it's like you have games where you're like, man, these guys are great, right? And then you have games where it's like, oh, I don't know. And so that's one of the reasons I think in this one, the Cowboys just find a way to keep it close, get the +7. I don't think money line is in play here, but the +7 is. And the beauty of this game and this size spread, much like we talked about with some of the games up that we talked about earlier, is backdoor cover is live here, right? The Packers give up a late touchdown. You can get into +7. I mean, you could be down 14 points in this game and still find a way to, well, I guess it would be a push, but you get what I'm saying. So if the Packers don't come out and dominate from the snap, it's a rough spread to have. And the fact that this is at 7, and so that means, you're going to push on a touchdown win. I just don't know if that's, in my opinion, worth the risk when I just don't trust the Packers all that much quite yet. I trust the defense. I trust that they're going to make the playoffs, but we seem to see this year after year where we kind of get ahead of ourselves in the Packers and then things kind of come down to earth. And, how good is this team? They dominated the Lions week one, but since then, and I mean, they played very well against the Commanders too, to be fair, but that I think last week against the Browns, some people were like, all right, let's just pause here. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Remember, no profit is guaranteed, and we just like betting on this channel. So, this is just my opinion. Put in the comments what you think. Thank you all for watching.